Welcome everyone. My name is Elayne Moseley. I'm on faculty at the Art Students League of Denver, and I teach adult classes in pen and ink. Plus, I also teach classes to the kids camp during the summer. Today, I'm going to be talking to you about Rembrandt and about his pen and ink drawings, even though he's very well known for his paintings and for his etchings. Today, I want to concentrate on his pen and ink drawings that he did. A lot of them were studies, but some of them were just uh, drawings that he did. Rembrandt lived from 1606 to 1669, so he was after the Renaissance and more into the Baroque era. He did a lot of pen and ink drawings that were either studies or they were just quick drawings that he just wanted to create. This is one of my favorites. I love this lion at rest. The line work is just absolutely beautiful. There's a variety of line work where you have very thick lines and then you have very thin lines. You have cross hatching. You have ink wash. And you see how he applied the ink wash where it's really heavy here as it goes down away from the light, and it's lighter as it gets to the top of the lion's body. I think it's a beautiful drawing, and it's one of my favorites. This one is called Woman Lying Awake in Bed. It was created in about 1635, somewhere in there. Probably a study for a painting, or maybe it was just a drawing. I don't know. It was quickly done. You can see again his line work where he had parallel lines, which we call contour lines. He had lines here and cross hatching where lines go one direction and another. Then he had very dynamic lines here that created movement in the drawing and brought you into the face, which is the emphasis of what he was trying to do. This one was probably done as a study for a painting, and as you can see, he changed his mind on where one of the legs went and actually made it more into a piece of material, maybe a cloth or a coat that fell off of this figure. This one is called Prodigal Son. It has a lot of line work. He spent a little bit more time doing the values in this and spent time putting in more of the wash, because I think it was a value study that he was creating for a painting. And here is just a quick study done almost completely in brushwork. You can see the ink wash that he very dramatically put in, and he probably spent like 5-10 minutes doing this drawing. It's a beautiful example of a quick study that he did in 1654. So now I'm going to create a pen and ink drawing for you. I'm going to start with the line work. And once I've completed the line work, then I'm going to let it dry. And while this one is drying, then I'm going to be doing an ink wash on one that I already have line work on. And I can show you how ink washes are done. So as you can see, I have a drawing already created. I thought I'd save a little time and do the drawing ahead of time, so because this is a short video, and I'm going to do the line work. Now you notice that I'm using traditional instruments. I have a pen holder, I have a fine point that's curved down. I dip it into the ink bottle, and when I run out of ink, I dip into the bottle and get more. Now, then the lovely thing about these kind of pens is that depending on how much pressure you add to the pen point, in other words, how hard you're pressing down, will determine how thick the line will be. Sometimes you want a really fine, delicate line, and sometimes you want a heavy-handed line, depending on what you're trying to emphasize. Now, you notice I'm starting to run out of ink a little bit, but that's what I wanted to do because I wanted to have a thin line for this glass that I'm creating here. I want it to feel like glass. So I'm not using much pressure and I'm not having as much ink. Now the other thing about doing your drawing ahead of time is that once the lines are dry, your pen lines are dry, you can come back and erase any pencil lines that you have that you don't want to remain in the drawing. And if you make a mistake, it's just part of the beauty of doing a real pen and ink drawing. Now I'm doing a still life of some objects that were in my home. And the thing about still lifes is you need to have kind of a rule of odd numbers. So if you pick 3 objects, have them slightly different heights and widths in order to create an interesting composition. Also, creating a triangle is always good. So you have to think about ahead of time what you want to have in the drawing if you're doing a still life. Now the other thing you have to keep in mind when you're doing pen and ink is you need to move your paper around while you're doing it so you don't get your hand in the ink like I just did there. But that's okay because I'm going to have a ink wash on top of this and it'll cover up most of that mistake. So now I'm going to do the flowers up here at the top. You can see why the masters liked using pen and ink because it's pretty quick. You can create a dramatic drawing in very little time. And once you've practiced with how much pressure you apply to the pen, because there's a slit in the middle of the point, and so if you press down hard, it's going to release more ink, making a thicker line. If you press down lightly, it's going to make a lighter line, a thinner line. I'm almost finished here. Now, on a lot of these pen and ink drawings, you may want to have some texture. Perhaps you have a really dark area that you want to emphasize, and you can do like what Rembrandt did, which was have a cross-hatching area within the drawing. And if you're going to do that, you need to do it now while you're doing these lines because you don't want to do it after you've applied the ink wash. Because like watercolors, If you overwork the paper, it's going to tear and pill and make a big mess, and the lines will bleed. So if you're going to do something like having line work within your drawing, you need to do it now while you're doing the outline of the objects. There. So now I'm going to let this dry. And you noticed I had a little bit of smudging, and that's because I was trying to do this fast, and I got my hand into it. So, but that's okay because I'm going to do an ink wash on this later. I'm going to set that aside and pull over this one. And now I'm going to put some ink on my very expensive piece of equipment here, otherwise known as a butter tub lid that's white. And if you put some of the pure ink on here, and you can do that with your pen, or if you feel brave, you can do it with just pouring it, but I'm not feeling brave today, so I'm not going to pour it. But now I'm going to get my trusty brush. Now, I'm using a bamboo brush that's about, I've had this brush for 20 years. If you get a good bamboo brush, it'll last you a long time. If you only use it for pen and ink or for watercolor, and then rinse it out really good to get all the pigment out of it at the end of the day, it'll always come back to the point, because you see what a nice point I have in this brush. Even though it's a very old brush, I've had it for a long time, but I love it, and this is what I use for pen and ink, and so that's basically all I use it for. So I drag a little of the pure ink down when add more water to it. Now the more water you add, the lighter the value is going to be. So I got a pot here that I'm going to carefully put ink wash on. Now I have to think about where the lightest highlights are and where the darkest darks. In this case, the light is from above, and so I am keeping that in mind when I'm putting my values in. Now you notice how that's starting to bleed, and I'm going to work with that because I want this side to be a little darker anyway. And I'm going to add a little more dark wash down here. So the handle, I'm going to try to leave fairly light, but I'm going to put a little bit of shadowing on the underneath part. Now typically inside of a jar or pot, like in this case, it's going to be a little bit darker, but because the light is coming from this direction, I'm going to leave it light like that on there, and I'm going to leave the rim light. Now, this pot will have a shadow. And it's going to go up onto this book that I have. Okay. Now the top of the book is going to have a lot of light on it, so from the light that's above. So I'm not going to put much on it at all. In fact, what I'll probably do is just have the shadow of this other pot. But I'm going to first do the other pot. Again, I'm going to keep in mind where my light source is. And in this case, again, it's coming from that direction on my page. So I'm going to have this be a little bit darker. I'm going to have the shadow come this way. And because it's on top of a book, the rest of this shadow is going to be off the book and down below, and so I can't see that. Now I'm going to lighten up the value as I come to the top. Going to have a little bit of shadow on the handle here, a little under the rim here. And again, I'm going to do the inside like I did the other pot, where only part of it is going to be in shadow. So that being said, it takes very little time to do these. The hard part is doing the line work like you want it. But you see, I did some line work over here so you could see that. And when you go over it with the wash, it's going to make it darker. Now I have another one here that is a figurine. It's a little music box that's in my house. And I thought she's a little angel that plays Silent Night. And I got her in Germany, and I'm very fond of her. So I've never drawn her before, but I thought she might be kind of fun to do this pen and ink exercise with. When it pools like this and you want it lighter, then if you work quickly, you can pick up the pool of ink and move it around where you need it to. Sometimes you have to be pretty delicate with your brush work so that you can get the values like you want them to be. And you notice I kind of go back onto my paper towel and pick up to take out some of the color in my brush so that it'll be lighter. Now this is her little stand that's underneath her, so it's going to be in shadow. And she's going to have a little bit of a shadow as well. So we're going to try and finish her up. Now, a lot of times when I'm teaching this class, I get quite a few people that are watercolor people, and they tell me that this is a really good exercise for them because it forces you to think about your lights and darks. Where is your lightest light? Where is your darkest dark in your composition? Yeah, because a lot of times when we're doing paintings, people get so hung up on what color is this? And is it the right color blue or red or whatever the color is that you're struggling with? And they forget about the fact that, well, you need to be thinking about the composition as a whole and where your shadows are. Now, you remember on the Rembrandt, he didn't have a whole lot of shading on the face. And I'm not going to do a whole lot either. And I'm going to make mine a very light shadowing under the eye and the nose and the mouth, and just have a little bit on the hair. A little bit on the wings. And I'm going to do a little bit on the candle. And I'm almost done. Well, I hope you enjoyed my demonstration today, that this inspired you to do your own pen and ink drawings, and that perhaps you learned a little bit more about values, the lightest light, darkest dark, where you need to place them in your composition, and always keeping in mind where your light source is so that you can get your shadows and your highlights in correctly. I hope you had a pleasant viewing of this, and I hope to see you in one of my classes at the Art Students League. Have a great day.